And we are recording.
Okay, hello everyone. Okay, perfect. Hello everyone, and welcome to the ninth in the series of Robert Murray's Dynamic Leadership webinars. This one called Making Power Presentations. My name is Tiana, and I will be helping to facilitate all of the questions and comments that are coming throughout the webinar. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce Bob, as I noticed a number of people online may not know him. He's currently a partner at Incrementa Consulting, which is a Vancouver-based business consulting company, a #1 best-selling author, a global speaker, and a business strategist. His areas of expertise are in leadership, simple business strategy, culture, and engagement. As Bob takes you through the webinar today, I'm sure you'll have questions and comments about what he's saying, and I invite you to post them all in either the chat box or the question box. I will be monitoring everything coming in, and if the question relates specifically to a slide that we're on, I'll pose the question to him right then. If not, then I'll hold all the questions until the end. Please feel free to engage as much as you would like throughout the webinar, as everything will be anonymous, and that's how you'll get the most out of it. Now, without further ado, off to you, Bob.
All right. Thanks so much, Tiana, and welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you are in. I'm very, very excited about this webinar today. This webinar that I'm going to be giving to you today is all about making power presentations, and it is a part of, or a 30-minute part of a 2-day workshop that I actually do and have been doing for a number of years to executives all over the world and teaching them how do they communicate better when they're standing in front of an audience. Now, when you're standing in front of an audience, what I'm referring to is that you could be in a meeting with your team, you could be in a meeting with customers, you could be presenting to the board of directors, you could be presenting at a conference, you could be on the factory floor and giving a presentation to a group of workers there. Whenever you are standing in front of a group and you are speaking, you are presenting as if you were a professional speaker, and you have to start thinking that way. And today we're going to go through some of the tips and tricks that I use as a professional speaker, starting with, what are the objectives of a presentation? How do you structure a presentation so you get maximum impact for your audience? Then I'm going to share with you a couple of the secrets of professional speakers. And then finally, we're going to talk about how do I get over nervous and distracting habits that I may have as a speaker or as a presenter. And so there's where we're going to go over the next 30 minutes. As Tiana also said, send us your questions. If you got any questions, any comments, just send them along, and then Tiana will pass them along to me. So let's get started. And the first one is talking about the key objectives for any presentation. Well, first of all, I got to talk about the steps to better communication, and this is something that I see when I travel all over the world, and I see leaders of all different titles, from frontline leaders all the way up to executive leaders. They come from different walks of life. They come from different cultures, different religions, male, female, highly educated, no education. Different backgrounds as well. Some are engineers, some are accountants, some are salespeople. One of the things that I've discovered, though, amongst all the most effective leaders everywhere that I've gone, is that they all share one thing in common, and that is the ability to speak in front of a group of people and the ability to communicate. And it's absolutely critical to your success and your career advancement. So let's get into the objectives part of this. And this one's really, really simple. Before you start any single presentation, and you go all the way back to the beginning, you're actually starting to build your presentation, or you're building the thoughts that are going to go into a talk that you're going to deliver. It has to have one or more very, very key objectives. And they are: your presentation has to have at least one of these 4 objectives: to inform, to entertain, to touch emotions, or to move people to action. Now, to inform, you might be educating. You might be rolling out a new process, a new procedure, a new product, and you are standing in front of a group and you are educating them on that particular product, process, procedure, whatever that happens to be. To entertain is when you have a speaker, and this is usually when you have you're attending a conference and the speaker is there, and one of the objectives of a keynote speaker is to inform and touch emotions, but also to entertain the group and to engage them. And to entertain really means to tell stories and to inject more energy into the presentation. The third one is touch on emotions. And from time to time, you might be trying to raise money or get people to volunteer for a particular charity or cause that you have. And you might be standing in front of a group of people and telling a story as it relates to the charity as an example. And you want to touch emotions. You want to touch their hearts and get them to move to the fourth one, which is action. Now, this all may seem really, really basic, but the best presentations start at the moment that you have a blank piece of paper or a blank screen in front of you and you're planning what it is that you're going to be presenting about. And you have to start with the end in mind. And the way I always approach it is that if somebody has asked me to speak professionally to a group, I will always ask the question, when I'm finished speaking, how do you want the people in the room to feel? And then from that feedback, I'll know that, okay, well, I have to build a presentation that's going to inform, maybe entertain, maybe touch emotions, potentially move to action, or a combination of all four. And as I said, it might sound really, really basic, but it's absolutely critical that when you begin your presentation, always begin with the end in mind. The next thing what I want to do is talk about structuring your presentation for maximum impact. And it really just starts with what I call the 80-20 rule. And, we're building your presentation. Here's what I discover amongst most people who deliver a presentation is that they will spend about 80 to 90% of their time building an amazing PowerPoint deck. They will have slides that have great information, groovy graphics, beautiful pictures. They will have tremendous amount of information in them. And then they will spend a very tiny portion of their time working on the actual preparation or the rehearsal for their presentation. What I've seen about the best speakers in the world is they turn that around and they spend about 20% of their time on the actual content or the deck, the PowerPoint deck, if you're going to be using PowerPoint, and they spend about 80% of their time preparing to deliver. But when it does come to the build of your presentation, first step is, what is my objective? Second step, begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey used to say that quite often, and it's so true. Visualize, picture exactly what it will feel like when you say your last word in your presentation. And your last words are usually, thank you. Visualize what the feeling in that room, whatever the size of the room is going to be, visualize what that's going to be like. Then you organize your presentation so that it will deliver on your objectives and that end feeling. The fourth bullet I've got here is what I call an idea file. And I keep an idea file in my notebook and one online. And it's online, it's quite simply called idea file. And when somebody sends me an idea, a great article from LinkedIn, a great a post from somewhere, I will then cut and paste that into my idea file so that when I do have to build a presentation, I've got ideas already. After you get some things down on paper or on the screen, I check it for flow to make sure that every single slide that I'm going to be using has got one theme or one idea on it. Then I look at the structure, and every single presentation I'm going to try to keep it to 3 to 7 points and no more. And it's really got to do with the human brain, and the human brain can't remember things beyond the number 7. That's quite often why you only have 7 numbers in a phone number, with the exception of the area code. The human brain is only capable of remembering that. And then the final part, and this is really important for an adult audience, your presentation has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So in other words, it has to have an introduction. Here's what we're going to talk about today. The middle part is the actual presentation, and then the end part is your summary. Now, the way adults learn is that adults need to have this structure. They need to have a structure of, okay, here's the introduction. Great. This is what I'm going to learn today. The middle part, okay, here's the content. And the brain actually unconsciously puts all of this together. And then finally, it has to have a summary so that the adult learner or the adult brain can then put it together and think, okay, all the ideas are coming together now. The presentation is wrapping up. If you've ever stood in front of a group of people delivering a presentation and you are finished, you've hit your last slide or your last note, and then there's this sort of uncomfortable pause between the audience reaction and you saying, that's it, thank you. It's because you have not built in a beginning, a middle, and an end. This is critical. That's why I've got it in red. That's why it's underlined. Every single time you build a presentation, make sure you have an introduction, your topic, and a summary. The next part is all about the process of power presenting. And I got 5 points here. And the first one is have a message that's worth communicating. And I like to say is quite simply, don't start your mouth before your brain is ready. I've seen so many executives stand up and talk to a group of people, and you can tell right away they haven't prepared and they don't have a message that's worth communicating. And most often it's just because the executive loves to hear the sound of his or her own voice. The most powerful messages that you can deliver are ones that are worth listening to. The second point is gain your listeners' attention. So capture their interest somehow. Build their trust somehow. And factor that in when you're building a presentation. Factor that into when you're practicing your delivery. This is why I like to use stories when I'm giving a presentation or a speech. And I also like to use pictures. Often when I'm giving a presentation, there'll be no words on the screen if there is a screen behind me. There'll just be pictures. It captures people's attention. It captures their interest. And it allows you then to talk and build a story. Third one, answer the question that every listener has. And that's that radio station WIIFM, or what's in it for me? If you really want to hold a room and capture the audience's attention and their interest and their engagement, you need to deliver a presentation that answers that question, what's in it for me? Not you, the presenter, but the audience of people that you're talking to. What are they going to learn from this? The WIIFM, or what's in it for you today, is that I'm giving you some great professional speaker tips and tricks for how you can make your presentations more powerful, more impactful, more engaging. You get better results, and results are defined however you're defining them. If you are able to answer that question, what's in it for my audience? So in other words, if I'm going to speak for 15 minutes, why should they listen to me? The fourth one is focus on making yourself understood, but it starts with understanding. And you will have a better sense of understanding from your audience if you understand your audience first and foremost. So whatever audience you're going to be presenting in front of, do your homework. Do your very, very best to understand who's in the audience, what are their interests, what are their current pain points that they might have, what's going on in their world. And if you can understand that, then you can build a presentation that is much more empathetic to what's going on in your audience's world at that point in time. And it could be all sorts of different things that are going on. But if you understand that, you will have a way better understanding from your audience. And then the fifth and final one in the process is obtaining feedback. It's not your audience's fault if they don't understand you. It's yours. And it's, you go back to points 1, 2, 3, and 4. And by the way, this presentation today is being recorded, and you can download these slides after we've finished. But making sure you're obtaining feedback. And when I'm presenting, I look for all sorts of different ways to obtain feedback. I'm looking for body language. I'm looking for questions that are coming back at me. I'm looking for comments that are coming back at me as well. The next part is that I'm going to talk about is the secrets of professional speakers. And I just want to remind everybody again, the 30 minutes that we're going through this, we're looking for questions. Love getting your questions and your comments. And this is also part of a 2-day program that I put together. So if you're interested in hearing more about what goes into a 2-day program for how can I make better, more powerful presentations, just reach out to us and we'll give you some information on that. So the secrets of professional speakers, and this comes from my own career of having speaking or spoken professionally for a number of years now, and made all sorts of mistakes when I've been on the stage, watching other speakers, watching actors, watching other great leaders, and sometimes watching politicians as well. And you get some great lessons right now with the American presidential elections primaries going on, seeing some great speakers and seeing some rather comical speakers. But anyways, when anytime somebody is speaking, I'm watching them and I'm learning from them. So that's one of the tips and tricks that you can use right off the start. So the very, very, very first thing that I can tell you about the secrets of professional speakers, those people who do it better than anybody else, here's the number one tip. Breathe. One time I was actually giving a presentation, and the very famous American doctor, Dr. Oz, was also on the same bill giving a presentation. And in some places, they have what they call a green room, which is just a room backstage somewhere where presenters or speakers get ready to speak. And while I was rehearsing and going over some of the ideas that I wanted to present, I saw Dr. Oz standing in a corner, and he was taking an amazingly deep breath. And he was holding it. And then he let it out for a long period of time. And then he would repeat. And then he would repeat it again. And then he would repeat it again. And finally, I walked over to him and said, "What are you doing?" And he just told me that he was getting himself ready. And then he started to tell me about the power of oxygen and the power of filling your lungs with air, and how that it totally relaxes your body and how it relaxes your brain. It fuels your brain. It fuels your voice. It's one of the most important things that you can do as a presenter to get rid of nervousness. It's one of the most important things you can do as a presenter or as a speaker to calm yourself, think about your material, prepare your voice to speak, and to prepare your brain to think while you're speaking. The number one tip. And often when I see speakers struggling or presenters struggling at the front of the room, it's mostly because they're not breathing. And we'll get into that a little bit when I talk about handling nervousness. More tips. Something's going on in our mind when we're speaking, and something's going on in your mind right now. And I call it the movie in your mind. Everybody has this movie that plays in their mind. It's that little voice, that nagging little voice, or maybe it's that devil that sits on your shoulder and the angel that sits on the other shoulder. But at the end of the day, it's your ego. And your ego is there to protect you. It's there to make sure that you are looking good and that you are right in what it is that you're doing. But it does it in a very strange way. That little voice, or your ego, that movie in your mind, will quite often say things to you inside your mind that are negative. If you've ever had a bad experience speaking, that little voice inside your head will remind you of that time. It will remind you of the time that you maybe forgot exactly what you were going to say, that the audience didn't respond the way that you wanted them to, that you were incredibly nervous. It will just keep playing those negative messages over and over and over again. Everybody has that. But here's the secret. Your brain is only capable of one thought at a time. So change the thought. Acknowledge the message that your voice or your ego is attempting to send you by saying, "Hey, thank you for sharing." And sometimes I say that out loud before I take the stage, and people look at me and go like, "What?" Your brain is only capable of one thought at a time, so change the thought. If you're hearing a negative message, change it to a positive message. So if the voice says to you, "Oh, remember last time the audience didn't respond so well to that story," then I'll say something to myself like, "Oh, thank you for sharing. This time I've got it though. This time I understand my audience better. This time I'm going to deliver with more energy. This time I'm going to deliver with more impact. It's going to be great." When you're able to change that movie that's playing in your mind, you also change your body chemistry. Because your brain is so powerful that when you're thinking negative thoughts, your body chemistry actually starts to prepare for a negative experience. It'll really release more adrenaline and more cortisol into your body, which is a stress hormone. And then your body starts to prepare for that, and your body will tense up. You will get more nervous. But if you're thinking a very positive, pleasurable thought about how much fun you're going to have when you're giving your presentation, and that's the way I think. When I'm going to take a stage in front of 100 or more people, before I take the stage, I'm thinking about how much fun I'm going to have and what a great session it's going to be. This actually relaxes you. It prepares your body for a fun experience. It actually releases things like oxytocin and endorphins, which are the pleasure hormones, and that you're much more relaxed. And when you're relaxed, your brain will think much more clearly. When your brain is thinking much more clearly, you'll have much more fun as well. So it all starts with that movie in your mind. If the movie is playing a negative thought, or maybe even it's playing a horror picture, change it to a comedy. Change it to something that's romantic. Change it to something that is going to make you feel great. The next thing that great speakers will do is they will read the audience, and they're constantly looking to the audience to make sure that they know ahead of time what the audience is like, what they're going through. And then when they're speaking, they're constantly monitoring the audience as they speak. Now, this is something that takes a lot of practice, and the biggest part of the practice starts with your preparation. If you know your material better than anything, then you frees up a lot of your brain processing time to actually pay attention to what's going on in the room. The fourth bullet here is, if your audience is distracted, stop. If something seems wrong, stop. Now, this is really hard to do, and I got to admit to you right up front, it takes a lot of practice, but it's also one of the best things that you can do. If there's something that seems like it's going on in the room, so in other words, somebody's playing with technology, somebody is being distracting, somebody comes into the room late, just stop. Your brain will start playing a negative movie, saying, "Oh my God, you have to say something. This silence is super uncomfortable. People are looking at you funny." No, they're not actually. They're actually saying in their minds, "I'm glad this person is nice, more the speaker is dealing with this." Remember that if anything goes wrong, just stop. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. The next thing that great speakers are aware of is what I call cerebral misfires. So if you're going along in your presentation, then all of a sudden, you can't remember what you're going to say next. You lose your place, or oh my God, you forget what you're going to say next. This is when panic will set in with most people. You can prepare yourself or minimize these cerebral misfires through preparation and rehearsal. And go back to the beginning, this is what I was saying about making sure that you're spending more time on preparing than you are on building a great PowerPoint deck. Now it happens to me all the time. If I'm going to be speaking for 90 minutes, which I quite often will do, in 90 minutes, I guarantee you I'm going to forget something. The key, though, is don't panic. It'll happen, but don't panic. Just simply smile and move on to your next thought. Don't draw attention to it by saying something like, "Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. I'm sorry." Never apologize, never draw attention to it. Just simply smile and move on. But here's the cool part. Your audience, being human beings, will think that it was their fault for not paying attention. If there's two completely different thoughts, your audience will actually Like, oh, gee, what just happened here? I mustn't have been paying attention. I must have been thinking about buying bread or milk on the way home today. Your audience then, and you'll be able to see this in your audience, whether you have 5 people in front of you or 500 people in front of you, you will actually see them sit up taller in their seats and they will lean forward and become more engaged because you have just had what I call a cerebral misfire and they thought it was their fault if you don't draw attention to it. This takes a tremendous amount of practice. You're not going to get it on your first presentation. But after your second or third presentation and this happens, you'll be a master at it. The final one I'm going to talk about today in our 30-minute webinar is getting over nervousness. Number one tip, breathe. Everybody gets nervous. I am always nervous, whether I'm going to present to 5 people or 500. Before I take the stage or the front of the room, I got some butterflies that are flying around in my stomach. And I'm thinking about how I'm going to start. I'm thinking about the middle. And I'm also thinking about how I'm going to end. The way I get over this is to quite simply breathe. Take 3 really deep breaths. Hold each breath that you take in and let them out slowly. If you try it even right now as you're listening to this, you'll discover that you'll feel, all of a sudden, you'll start to feel more relaxed. And I know some of you watching or listening to this right now are in a conference room with some of your colleagues. Right now, all of you together, take a nice deep breath in. You probably got great big smiles on your face when you're doing it. Notice how good you feel, though. It just really totally relaxes you, especially with that long out breath. This is the number one way to get over nervousness. Now, as a speaker, I've studied nervousness in myself and in others. And one of the things I've learned is that there's 118 visible signs of nervousness, all the way from your voice cracking, your mouth being really dry, blinking, sweating, playing with things, clenching your teeth, doing weird things with your hands, like playing with your rings, pulling at your fingers, smoothing your hair, adjusting your clothing. Those are all visible signs of nervousness. When you are prepared to deliver, you will also be way better at recognizing your own nervousness. You might be speaking too fast. You might be speaking at a volume that's too low. You might be, as I said, you might not feel yourself. Your knees might be shaking. If you take 3 deep breaths in, hold them, and let each breath out really slowly, you'll discover you get over that. If you're up in front of the room, much more difficult to stop and take 3 deep breaths, but it's easy to take 1 deep breath, and you'll discover that you're able to move on. Being nervous while you're presenting is a fact of life. As I said, I'm always nervous before I take the stage. So learn through practice how to recognize how and when you express your version of nervousness outwardly. You can learn to disguise it. One of the ways that I talked about was breathing. If I'm going to be presenting in a really, really hot room, and sometimes I'm on a stage with really bright lights, I'm going to sweat more. I know that I'm going to perspire more. So I just wear dark clothes. I wear a dark colored suit so that you can't see that, my armpits might be absolutely soaked in sweat. It just, again, comes from practice. And it also comes from developing what I call a pre-speech routine. Now, the famous rock and roller Elvis was so nervous that he had to have his dressing room placed 1,000 feet or 300 meters away from the stage. And that when he was getting ready to go on stage, he would walk 1,000 feet, 1,000 steps, he called it. And every single step that he took, he would think, first line, first song. Now, Elvis was so nervous that he would often throw up or vomit before a performance. And this was his pre-concert routine, walking those 1,000 steps and saying to himself, first line, first song. Whatever happens to be your pre-speech or pre-presentation routine, discover it. One of the things that works for me is music. I have a very select playlist, 6 songs that mean something to me. And before I take the stage or before I deliver a presentation, I always listen to the same 6 songs. It gets me ready for it. It programs my mind to present. It also teaches, it reminds me to breathe. It reminds me to review my material. It reminds me to review that first thought, that first idea that I want to present. You're going to be nervous. Recognize that. Tell the movie in your mind that you've got this and that you're going to have fun and it's going to be powerful for your audience. The last thought that I want to give you, and then we're going to open it up for any questions that Tiana may have received, is know your content. When you know what you're talking about, you don't need to know what you're going to say. It frees up your brain to think positively. It frees up your brain to make sure that you're getting feedback from your audience. Now, it does take a lot of practice. When you know your content, you just do it unconsciously, just like you're having a really great conversation with a close friend. You know, when you're having a conversation with a friend or colleagues over the water cooler or the coffee machine, you're not thinking about what you're going to say. You're not nervous. You're not, doing these weird things. It's just natural for you. Think about the first time you ever learned to tie your shoes or drive a car. It took so much conscious effort. You had to think about every step in tying your shoes or driving your car. And then after about 2 weeks, you don't even think about it anymore. In fact, I don't even think anybody even thinks today, after tying your shoes for myself, for 50 years, I don't even think about it. I'm thinking about other stuff. It's because I know my content. Unconsciously, I know how to tie my shoes. Great presentations. Unconsciously, I know exactly what it is that I have to deliver next, so that my conscious brain is freed up to do all sorts of other things, like scan the audience, think about the delivery, think about the beginning, the middle, and the end of my presentation. Think about the WIIFM that goes into a presentation. Now, there's a 30-minute, really, really quick tour through a 2-day program and a lifetime of professional speaking and presenting as a leader. We'll open it up to questions now, Tiana.
Hello. Okay, thank you very much, Bob. I know how hard you work to try to cut that all down. So, as Bob said time and time again, if you guys are looking for more information, you want the full 2 days, and you're trying to figure out, all the stuff that we couldn't get to, do reach out to us, info@robert-murray.com, and we will get you what you need. I just wanted to go over all of the resources that Bob does so generously offer all of you, because as he's written here, leadership mastery is a journey, not a destination. And Bob is here to help you on that journey. If you've met him in person, you know how selfless he is and how he just wants to help. So here are some of the resources that he offers to provide ongoing tips and tricks and insights for you to continue to nurture your inner leader. If you're not already familiar with his books, he has written 3. They're a mixture of simple business strategy and life and leadership lessons in the form of short stories. I highly recommend them as they're easy to read, content-filled, and will get you really thinking about you, your life, and your leadership in new ways. If you're looking for more information on those books, please visit robert-murray.com/books. On his website, you'll also notice that there's a ton of resources. There's weekly Tuesday Tune-Up blog posts that can go right to your email inbox, monthly newsletters, and a list of tons of services that he offers and more. So feel free to go in and browse through, and if you don't even know where to start, but you have a question, then just reach out to us directly at info@robert-murray.com. I also invite you to check out Bob's company page at incrementa.ca. There you'll learn more about his business services, and you can meet his team of highly trained experts in all different areas. And last but not least, I know that Bob works hard on filling his social media feeds with daily phrases of motivation to get you thinking deeper about your leadership. So if you're not already connected, choose any of the profiles that you prefer and join him there. I want to thank everybody for your participation today. I do have a few questions, and I understand that we said it was going to be 30 minutes, and there's just so much content that, we tried to get through as much as we can. So I've got a couple questions. We might just limit it to about 2 or 3 questions. But Bob, our first question is, how do I deal with distracting people when I'm giving my presentation?
I love that one, especially in a business environment. You're going to have people who are coming into the room late. You're going to have people on technology. You're going to have people having side conversations. Number one tip: stop. Just stop. When people come into the room late, the first thing that happens when the door opens is everybody in the room looks to see who's coming in. If you're still talking, they're not listening to you. If you stop, what it'll do is the person who's coming in late will move to their seat and sit down really fast, because all of a sudden they are the center of attention, not you. And learning to stop and pause, instead of just plowing through your material, is one of the best things that you can do to handle distracting people.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And we're just going to have time for one more question. All the other people who did send in their questions, I will reply to you personally, so do not worry about that. But this one I do feel is a great question that would interest everyone. What can I be doing on a daily or weekly basis to improve my public speaking?
Hmm. Another great question. Speak, present as often as you can. I know that speaking is one of those things, public speaking. In fact, if you Google top 10 fears of human beings, you will see things like the fear of public speaking is often number one. The fear of yourself dying is number two. So that translates to me that people would rather die than speak in public. Um, you only get better by doing it often. Practice, practice, practice. Do it as much as you can. And the second step to that is to prepare. Don't spend all your time on your PowerPoint deck. Spend your time on preparing and rehearsing. Rehearse in front of a mirror. Rehearse in front of a critical audience, like your spouse or your partner. Don't rehearse in front of your dog, because your dog thinks everything you do is great. So just keep practicing. Yeah.
That's some great advice. Thank you so much, Bob, and thank you everybody who joined on. We will be putting this recording up on the website, on the webinars area, if you were not able to attend the entire. And again, always reach out to us if you have any questions or concerns. And have a great day or evening, depending where you're tuning in from.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.